On this week's episode of the NCWLIFE Magazine, we're visiting with 3 local artists who share their work, philosophies on art, and their inspirations. There's something for everyone in this episode, including artisan woodwork with Chelan's Brogan, relaxing fiber arts with Cashmere's Thresher, and we get a little kooky for you sci-fi nerds with installation art by Wenatchee's Ron Evans. We'll start off this episode by heading up to Chelan and meeting up with Brogan in his woodshop.
I'm Brogan. I've lived in Chelan for 26 years, and we are currently standing in my wood shop here out by Chelan Fruit. On October 17th, we were woken up at about 2 o'clock in the morning by the fire department, and they were like, "Hey, you got to get out of your house." And I was like, "Why?" And as soon as I came out of the bedroom, I looked through the living room window, and this place was. It was heating up the valley. It was on fire. It burned that night. They got it put out by about 4 o'clock in the morning, and my chickens were at fault for that. They decided to, use the heat lamp in other ways than what it should have been used, but that's okay. The only thing left of that building is the floor in here. And so we ended up getting this building finished probably about a month and a half ago. And we weren't really sure what we were going to do with it. It was either going to be a music studio or a photography studio, but all in all, it ended up becoming a wood shop. A lot of my background in hands-on woodworking or construction come from both my mom and my dad's side of the family. My mom's dad, he was brought up here from Nevada to build Wapato Point. That was always part of my childhood growing up. I was out in the garage with Papa, as we called him. It just kind of started with building a small thing and cutting one thing, putting a nail in another, and that's kind of where it all began. My dad's grandpa built a lot of houses in town and did a lot of woodworking with his hands. In fact, he built his last house at 96 years old by himself. And that's a huge inspiration for me, just to start small. I mean, I'm starting small, like I said, and I love it. I absolutely enjoy every second of it. But just to be able to carry on what my family has done and work with their hands, I love doing it. And I guess all I can say to finish that up is I wish they were here to work with me, because it'd be such an honor to work with them. Little Valley Home Services is more of a kind of a maintenance business, light finish construction, a little bit of contracting, but this hand-built cutting board, vintage antique furniture refinishing is really kind of all on its own. It's something that Little Valley Home Services kind of took on. It's not really what I was expecting the business to be, but after it got started, it's kind of what it morphed itself into, and I really enjoy it. I'm totally fine with the road that this business decided to take itself on. I kind of started out making a ton of different things, and the cutting boards were, I guess, something that just caught on. I had a lot of comments on Facebook and Instagram on them, and so then I kind of took off with it. I was like, wait a minute, let's get some nicer wood, let's get some nicer tools, and try and make these something that people would really enjoy having in their homes. And I don't know, there's so much out there now that's technologically advanced or made out of aluminum or stainless steel, and I really have to go back and say that there's nothing better than something handmade. Everything I do, nothing has a perfect cut, nothing has a perfect line on it. But it's perfect in the sense that it was made by hand, and it was made out of something raw and organic, and I don't know that you can beat that. Everything's so manufactured anymore, and that's kind of where the inspiration for this came from. I had a couple of people say, wait a minute, I really like these, you should consider making more of these and selling them, and that's where it all started. My go-to is walnut. I didn't buy anything else besides walnut, and then I was kind of introduced to cherry. And cherry is now one of my favorites. If you have cabinets in your house, they're probably cherry. But cherry has a lot of character to it, and it's on the lighter reddish side of things. And walnut is so dark, and it has a ton of great lines and a lot of character. But I think mostly I'm working with cherry, walnut, and mahogany. I don't really differ from those. I get a lot of people asking for olive wood lately, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm leaning towards now, and I really like it as well. But I think, like I said, my go-tos are cherry and walnut. There's a business downtown on the corner called Lush, and she's going to be carrying all of my finished products, and you can also place a custom order with her. And you know, if you're wanting to just kind of see how they're used, you know, I talk to a lot of people and they say, well, what's a charcuterie board? And you know, to be honest, when I started, I didn't know. But Local Myth is also having a bunch of them made because they're going to start serving some different charcuterie dishes this summer. So you can go into Local Myth and check them out. They're going to have some really neat ones done here soon. I'm actually going to get started on those next week. But if you're looking to purchase one, you can get a hold of Jody down at Lush, and she can take custom orders, or you know, you can check out her store and kind of see what she's got in stock. It's an honor to have someone come to me and ask me to build them something that, you know, I know is going to be in their kitchen and in their home for years. And I just hope that, you know, when people come to me and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for, this is the kind of wood that I want, this is a shape that I wanted, or the thickness or whatever, you know, I hope it's something that stays in their family for years, and not because I made it, but because it was handmade, you know. You just don't see a lot of it anymore. And I guess on the contrasting side of that, you are starting to see it in a sense. People are kind of starting to get back into that handmade, you know, homestead, farm style life, which is really cool. But I just hope that, you know, people use it for years and take care of it and really enjoy it and pass it down. And that's kind of my goal for these, you know. There's nothing like something that's handmade.
Up next on the NCWLIFE Magazine, we'll visit with Mary Thresher, a local fiber artist, followed by gallery owner Ron Evans as he completes his latest installation show for Radar Station.
My name is Mary Thresher, and today we're in my fiber room. And it's just a room where I can kind of come and escape from a lot of the day-to-day things. I've tried different things throughout my art life. I've tried painting, I've done figure drawing. I always like to be creative. And I just have kind of centered on fiber arts, anything that has to do with yarn. I love embroidery, I love felted work. Right now with my knitting, the spinning and weaving has kind of taken over my passion, I guess you'd say. And it came from, I used to do a lot of hand embroidery work, but when traveling with our kids, I just started not to be able to do such fine work in the car, and so I picked up knitting needles and yarn, and now I'm knitting, I'm designing different things, I'm spinning my own yarn so that I can knit my own projects with it, and just really enjoying that tactile feel. And it also, in our busy lifestyle, it's a real, it slows me down. And I enjoy anything fine, fine lace, fine, you know, thin yarns. And it just, again, it slows me down. It's a tactile feel, it's rhythmic, and it kind of helps me put things into perspective sometimes, like if there's a problem I'm trying to work through, or it's been a hectic day. And at the end of it, you end up with a product that you can keep yourself if you'd like, you can give away. Sometimes I'll be working on a project that's for someone specific, and it'll help me keep them in my mind and pray for them, and allows me to kind of enter into that space of calm. I think people of all ages are again starting to return to something that gets us off of the cell phone, the computer, something that we can do, but we don't have to do it because we need to. I think for a long time people have looked at, you know, knitting a sweater because you have to have that sweater. But in this day and age, we get to knit a sweater or spin the yarn from the sheep because it's something that we can do for enjoyment, for relaxation. So what I'm doing here is, this is a breed of sheep called Cheviot, and it's a combed top, and this is what I usually like to spin with. And it does come from the sheep, but someone else has sheared the sheep. They've done all the prep work. What I'm doing when I spin is I'm pulling out, and if you can see, this is actually the length of the Cheviot breed of sheep, their wool. And this whole top is filled with that length of wool. And so when I'm spinning, I'm pulling out those pieces, those what are called staple lengths, and I am adding twist into the fiber. What I'm spinning on is what's called a castle wheel, because it's in front of me. It's a little different than maybe the traditional wheel that people imagine. It's got a double treadle, which means I'm using both of my feet as I treadle, which is causing the main wheel to go around and put that twist in. My right hand is pulling the fiber back, and my left hand fingers are holding on to the twist and letting the twist enter into the fiber as I'm pulling it back. All you see on the bobbin, which is what holds the yarn, is the one color. But this isn't exactly how it started, but it came in a braid that had colors starting from one end to the other. You get colors. So underneath the burgundy are like 5 other colors. And this was a 4-ounce braid, 4 ounce of fiber. And this took me about 2 weeks, just because I sit down 30 minutes at a time and work on it. So from the braid, from spinning onto the bobbin, I will produce a skein of yarn. And this again came from a braid very similar in color. Let me pull this one out. This is a braid that I'm going to be using to do a very similar project. So from the fiber, the spinning wheel, and then coming out with the actual skein of yarn to use to knit anything. Depending on the amount of yarn that you end up with, you can do scarves, you could do sweaters, hats, mittens, shawls. I enjoy lace knitting, so I'm always about the finer, trying to spin as fine as I can to be able to do lace like what I'm wearing. I think people enjoy getting handmade or locally made items because they see the time that goes into it, the effort, and occasionally, you know, we can't spend that time, but we can appreciate someone else taking the time to sit down and knit an Afghan for a newborn baby, or weave a blanket. Or you go to the farmer's market and you see people with their, you know, jars of honey, or their even their flowers that they have gone out and spent time doing, and that just encourages us to do the same thing. Being creative with my hands started with my mom, and she taught me how to do the embroidery. She taught me how to knit. She just, you know, taught me the basics. And over the last few years, as you know, her life took a turn, it even became more important. I just feel like I'm carrying on a heritage item that my mom passed on to me that was important to her. And if I can do that for someone else, whether it's through the guild, through teaching, through just having a conversation at, the local, wherever, coffee house or whatever, and encourage people to pick up something to do, that would be great.
Up next on the NCWLIFE Magazine, we'll close today's episode with a visit to Radar Station as owner Ron Evans works to complete his sci-fi inspired installation show for April's First Friday.
My name is Ron Evans. I'm an artist, although I've been called much worse. I also own and run Radar Station Art Gallery, Art Lounge. It's gone through a lot of name changes, but it's basically a place where you can come get a drink and watch some entertainment, good music, kooky movies, and see robots and spaceships, although that's not exclusively what we feature here. And we do have publications to read. These are hot off the press. I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but things ain't looking so good for Mr. Roosevelt. For some reason in the fine art world, and I do use fine loosely, painting has been king for a long time. And so that's why I spent my earlier days learning to paint. And I enjoy certain aspects of painting, and I sell quite a few of my paintings, but if I could make a living, in terms of making art, making the sculptures, doing this, finding random pieces of junk and putting them together is really satisfying to me. I don't really enjoy painting. I'm not a Bob Ross kind of, let's sit down here and have ourselves a relaxing painting. That's a beautiful day. I'm not like that. I am swearing up a storm and smashing things sometimes. I don't have a temper in general, but I've lost my temper a lot when creating. It's not easy for me. Painting never came easily, and I guess it's not supposed to be easy. But in terms of like that enjoyable, cathartic experience, making these kinds of like robotic, spacey sculptures, I guess you can call them sculptures. This is more of an installation show, the mothership that I'm working on right now. But it's kind of like creating your own Lego sets. It's that satisfying thing where you just sit down and put it all together, but instead of following an instruction book, you're making up the pieces, and you're just kind of looking around the house, and I constantly am pulling things off of the walls, like, well, that picture frame had its day, and now it's time to paint it orange, paint a lot of things orange, and then nail it to a board and make it look like a spaceship portal. Like I said, I go through a lot of utensils, kitchen utensils and old blenders, but modern design does not offer me many options, so I usually have to go digging through secondhand stores for older things. Like I use a lot of oven rings for portals and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's definitely my favorite way to create. LEDs. And like I said, you can arrange them in a pattern that's sort of fits. And because I didn't like it, there were just two dots. I've actually got it set so when I put them together, it will be more like that. You can kind of see the effect. See, the idea for the mothership came a couple of weeks ago, so I've only been working on it for about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And it came to me in a panic when I realized I hadn't booked the next month yet. I'd had the month after that booked, and maybe even the month after that, but not the immediate next month. I was like, what do I got? So I got the idea to just do a sci-fi themed show, which I hadn't done in a couple of years. But then I started thinking about all these pieces that I'd been collecting to do something with as decor at the bar, and I started working on them, and it just got bigger and bigger, and I liked how it was coming together, so I just decided to make that an installation show, and that will be part of First Friday in April. I don't know which one came first. The recycling aspect of this type of sculpture is something that I later appreciated about it and felt good about it. It's like, well, these tartar sauce cups can either go in the ocean or they can become a spaceship. And I realize it's not going to last forever. Who knows what will happen to any of this stuff when I'm dead and gone. But at least for a while, it's something a little bit more interesting than something in a landfill. But in terms of looking back, like I said, the retro-futuristic style is just always something that appealed to me. The less I have to build, the better. Someone gave me these pamphlet shelves that I was using in Radar Station for magazines, but I put some space portals in there. I don't know if you can see it. I haven't really drilled that out as well, but that'll have the same light effect behind it. Tubes, you can't go wrong with tubes. It's an interesting project because usually when you, like if you paint 12 paintings, you show up to the gallery and you hang them in the way that you want them. This is going to be a bit different because the pieces are all separate, but I need to connect them in some interesting way. So I will literally be working on little pieces right up until we open the doors on First Friday. But what I hope people get out of it is I want it to feel sort of like an amalgam of all of the classic sci-fi movies that, you know, if you're over the age of 40, that we all grew up with. And even younger people, I mean, they fall in love with the aesthetic of things that happened in the past. When I was watching Star Trek, the original series in the early 80s, I had no idea that that show was 20 years old. Like, I just fell in love with the show and that interesting. I knew it looked weird, but I loved that about it. And I loved the simplicity, yet textural aspect of those props. It really sculpted my brain. And I was a bigger Star Wars fan when I was a kid, but in terms of aesthetics, Star Trek had a much bigger impact on me. So I hope that people walk in and they get a little bit of that nostalgia, but mostly I just want it to be a cool thing to look at. That's kind of what most of my art is. I'm not the kind of artist that makes terribly deep art most of the time. I get some of that into my music, but in terms of my visual art, I'm a pop artist, kind of just a designer more than anything. Going back to the phones and the lack of interesting design in so many things, I think we miss something that went away. And even if it's in an intangible way, we don't really know what it is. We're drawn towards something that is special, and more we're drawn toward things that you can hold in your hand. I think this is why vinyl records came back in such a major way. You know, it's still not anywhere near the numbers it was in their heyday. I think it's all tied to some sort of thing that we just stopped caring about for a while, or at least we forgot about for a little bit. And you can always go to the dollar store and get a bunch of stuff, or you can spend a little bit more. Really, a lot of this stuff is not that much more expensive when you're talking about like trinkets and jewelry and even stickers. You know, like we got handmade everything here. I think that one of the reasons that it does appeal to so many people is like everyone likes something kooky. Everyone has somebody in their life, even if they walk in here and they're just, you can see it in their face, like, oh, this is not for them, but they appreciate that it's here. Or there's somebody in their life that it was like, I had to bring my grandson here. So the mothership will be installed and open to the public First Friday, April, and it will be up for 2 months. And like I said, depending on, I won't even say how people react to it, because I already know I'm kind of in love with it. More than anything I've made in a long time, this is really speaking to me. I mean, my place is called Radar Station. A lot of my aesthetic, and again, Radar Station is much more than a science fiction. It's not a science fiction art gallery. A lot of my stuff is science fiction, and a lot of the stuff that's here as decor harkens back to mid-century design in general. But it'll probably end up being a permanent part of my bar, and I may just turn my bar into a spaceship, because why not? It seems long overdue.